Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Godzilla vs. Kong, starring Alexander Skarsgård, Millie Bobby Brown, Rebecca Hall, Brian Tyree Henry, Sean Orguri, forgive me if I said that wrong, Isa Gonzalez, Julian Dennison, Kyle Chandler, and Demian Bichir, and directed by Adam Wingard. Now, before I get into this review and any details, check out my shirt. It's Godzilla vs. Kong. And I wore this on the time that I was taking notes for this movie and saw it on the IMAX theater. I'll talk about that in a minute. And I also wore it tonight for this show. So consider your guys lucky. And I did see this movie 3 times. Twice on HBO Max and once on an IMAX theater. And at a theater that near me that was open, thank God. And I really enjoyed the IMAX experience as it gave me more details and the effects looked really tremendous. And the monster fights were pretty awesome in that moment. So, and I'll say this much. I hope this is better than the original King Kong vs. Godzilla. Let's get into this movie and we'll find out. Somewhere on Skull Island, we see Kong getting up for the day and showers and sees a mute girl named Gia holding a Kong-like doll and throws a giant stick at a device to show he's being watched like in the Hunger Games. And can I just say something? When he scratches his ass, I was like, really? The first time I saw this, I was like, really? Did they have to go there? Did they have to go crude? I don't know. It's not that important. And Dr. Eileen Andrews, played by Rebecca Hall, who is the keeper of Kong with Gia, as Kong is protected by Dr. Andrews. And I like how we can relate to Kong this whole movie, as he's the innocent one before the battle between him and Godzilla. We get to Bernie Hayes, played by Brian Tyree Henry, recording his podcast about the monsters of the world. And the character is pretty wacky, and he cracked me up for half of the movie. This movie takes place 5 years after Godzilla King Ghidorah. And the last film, as Godzilla arrives to somewhere in Florida and hears a noise close by and destroys the town of wherever the city in Florida is and breaks the plant Bernie works at and hurts 8 people. And Walter Siemens, played by Demian Bichir, thinks Godzilla is no longer the savior they thought. And Madison Russell, returned by Millie Bobby Brown, doesn't believe him as she goes to her father, Mark Russell, returned by Kyle Chandler, as she wants to help Godzilla, and the fact these two characters are back from is a little familiar. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Walter brings Ren Shirazawa, who's the son of Dr. Shirazawa from the 2 Godzilla movies, and played by Sean O'Gari, I don't know if I'm saying that right, please forgive me, to recruit Nathan Lind, played by Alexander Skarsgård, an actor I've seen in maybe a thing or two, to stop Godzilla, and almost declines because of his brother's death and gets talked into it by Walter and Ren, as they send Nathan to Dr. Andrews and gives her a visit with Gia, as Nathan wants to use Kong to fight against Godzilla, as she's reluctant about it and accepts it reluctantly. And these characters are likable. Unfortunately, they don't matter as much, as this is supposed to be a Godzilla versus King Kong movie or something like that. They put Kong in a ship big enough to fit him, while Gia calls Nathan a coward on sign language because she only signs for the whole movie. And the actress is deaf. Like, she does sign. I will give her that. And she does a good job with that, which was a good comedic time. But they repeat the joke about 2 more times, maybe 3. And Kong is trapped under chrome steel, like in the original King Kong, as Walter's daughter Maya, played by Isa Gonzalez, is there to babysit Kong so he doesn't destroy ships or does anything to rock their ships, as well as Gia comes out in the rain to calm Kong down, as Kong feels he's not home and is sad about it. And Dr. Andrews wants to grab Gia as Kong can sign, which reminded me of the recent Planet of the Apes movies, Maddie gets a ride from her classmate Josh Valentine, played by Julian Dennison from Deadpool 2. Remember him? He was Fire Fist, anyways. Let's move on to where Bernie is at the bleach, and their chemistry is flat as they find him in his apartment, which she reveals herself as Mark and Emma Russell's daughter. And the first 30 minutes is much better than any of the two recent Godzilla movies, and it's so much better than those two films. I'm glad this is an improvement of those two movies. In Tasman Sea, we see Kong eating up some bloodied fish as Gia tells Dr. Andrews that Kong didn't trust anyone to communicate with, and Dr. Andrews talks with Nathan about how Kong is communicating with Gia as Gia hears Godzilla swimming towards the ship as Kong wants to fight, and Dr. Andrews wants to release Kong to fight Godzilla, and Nathan eventually does release him after spinning the ship upside down, and fights Godzilla at first underwater and jumps on two different ships to go after Godzilla and fight off until Kong knocks Godzilla in the water, and Godzilla uses his atomic breath to get Kong off the ship and fight again underwater until Dr. Andrews tells him to fire some missiles to keep them apart, and Kong goes back to the ship and stares down at Godzilla while I'll be fighting you again. All right, moving on. And it was a kick-ass fight as it was staged nicely and with some good ideas from both Kong and Godzilla. Maddie, Bernie, and Josh, yeah, that's right, inside the plant where Walter worked at and is currently down, and goes in a lost deep elevator with skull crawlers and goes down to hell, which was a funny line by Walter. And they go, or excuse me, I meant Bernie. And they go to Hong Kong by traveling in the elevator. Meanwhile, some helicopters carry Kong as Nathan, Dr. Andrews, and Maya and Gia drop him off at an underground way in the middle of the snow in Antarctica. And the cinematography is done better than Godzilla King of the Monsters, and done much better than the 2014 Godzilla film, where it was hard to see at night. And the special effects do look realistic on both Godzilla and Kong. Gia tells Kong that his family might be down the core world as the humans get in some wacky spaceship, as my mother calls it. The flying things that makes me laugh, because they do look like wacky spaceships. They go in some world where with Kong that's like Skull Island, where it's a jungle underneath the ground, and I like the look of the world as the dialogue is corny, sure, for sure, but the cinematography looks absolutely tremendous. The wacky spaceships are ambushed by a queen pterodactyl looking thing until Kong saves the main humans, and they blow up the queen, and Kong smashes it to death and drinks its blood, its green blood, I'll say, which is pretty gross, and the movie is beautiful to look at, too, just like last time. Maddie, Bernie, and Josh arrive in a factory in Hong Kong and cross a pathway to Walter and Ren, and we see Mecha Godzilla being controlled by Ren himself in his mind, and they watch Mecha Godzilla destroying some skull crawlers. As we learned why Godzilla was attacking a city, it was because Walter wants to replace Godzilla, while Mark sees Godzilla swimming towards Hong Kong, which makes sense for plot reasons, I guess. And Kong sees his family's handprint as he enters a cave and picks up his family's axe, and the humans enter the cave as Kong sits in the family's chair, which looks great, as it would look great on the IMAX screen, which it did. Believe me, it did. Maddie, Bernie, and Josh see a head of King Ghidorah as its memory is being transferred to Mechagod, or is being controlled by Ren Shirazawa, I'll say, to Mechagodzilla as Godzilla arrives in Hong Kong to find Mechagodzilla as Kong's axe lights up, and Kong puts the axe on the ground, where it lights up the ground, as it looks like a charger, And Godzilla responded to Mechagodzilla's invitation, led by Walter, and Maya takes a piece of energy and takes to her father in the wacky spaceship until Kong squishes her to death with some baby pterodactyl, almost killing Dr. Andrews, Gia, and Nathan. And Kong saves their life as they get in the wacky spaceship, and Kong goes to Godzilla for another fight. Meanwhile, Maddie, Bernie, and Josh get caught by security, and Maddie knows it was Walter who wanted Godzilla dead or replaced, which is what we did sort of learn earlier in the film. Godzilla vs. Kong Round 2 begins and destroys a lot of buildings as Godzilla uses his atomic breath on Kong and hits his axe, and it lights up the axe, which is a cool trick while Dr. Andrews, Nathan, and Gia get to Hong Kong during the fight. And this is the best fight of the whole movie, as it's a kick-ass fight between Godzilla and Kong as Godzilla breaks Kong's arm, scratches him up, roars at competition with Kong, and gets Kong down, and he almost dies, which is a sad moment for Kong fans. But it's not over yet, as Mechagodzilla breaks free from control of Ren's mind and kills Walter. And I like Godzilla vs. Kong fight as it's the best fight in the whole movie. Mechagodzilla rises and attacks Hong Kong as Godzilla fights Mechagodzilla, and Josh thinks of a password to stop Mechagodzilla while fighting with Godzilla, and Gia hears Kong's heartbeat as he's about to die, until Nathan puts electricity in Kong's heart to get his pulse going as it's successful. And Nathan brings him back alive, and Gia tells him Godzilla is not the enemy, it's Mechagodzilla that's the enemy, as Kong breaks his arm, or removes the breaking of the arm one more time to cure it, like Mel Gibson did in Lethal Weapon. As Godzilla is almost dead until Kong saves Godzilla's life, and yes, Godzilla and Kong team up against a bigger bad, like in Batman vs. Superman. But this does it so much better, and they fight Mechagodzilla, and Josh is locked out of the password system as he spills Bernie's drink on the machine that's keeping Mechagodzilla stronger, as Kong kills Mechagodzilla with the combination of Godzilla's atomic breath and Kong's axe, and everyone that didn't get killed are safe and alive, and says goodbye, and Godzilla says goodbye to Kong and goes back to in the sea, and Kong is back home on the core of Skull Island, and the climax was very kick-ass, and it was a fun, entertaining time, and it was great on IMAX, and I'll find as this movie it was just a lot of fun. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 7.9 out of 10. This was a fun, kick-ass time at the movies, despite the characters don't matter in this movie, just Godzilla and Kong. The special effects were tremendous, and the cinematography is great looking, as I'm looking forward to watching this again and on 4K, when I own this on 4K Blu-ray, as it's a guilty pleasure. I did like the plot, as some things made some connections to the other movies, but it did pull off a Batman vs. Superman thing at the end of the movie, but this movie does it so much better than that god-awful thing. So yeah, go check this out. I recommend you see it either way, in theaters or in the biggest screen as possible, or HBO Max. I don't care either way. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me for this Godzilla vs. Kong retrospective, and until next time, let them fight.